Welcome back to another exciting episode of Deck Profiles. I'll be your host with the most, Coach, and I'm here to talk to you about Godpunks, Danger World, Danger. Yeah, that's in the shot, right? Yeah. Okay. New deck from Set 1, Gargantua Awakened, S-BT01 Gargantua Awakened. My buddies, the snake, because the snake is amazing and it does the most. Okay. So starting off, we playing 4 Daipon. Daipon's the best because he helps the theme of the deck really well, which is to tell your opponent that I'm going to use their resources for my own game. When he comes into play, you tell your opponent to charge 1, and then you charge 2, and if you got Godpunk on the field, draw a card. He's not once per turn, so you can just keep using and abusing him. Sometimes it's beneficial, sometimes it's not. Calling him like once, maybe twice a turn is okay, because all you really want to use him for is to make sure your opponent has gauge to pay for the call cost of your cards. Next, you're playing 3 Craze Girl Gothrisis. She's the best. I play her at 3 because I'm generally afraid of just my opponent not having gauge, and I don't have a way to give him gauge, and then she's just dead in my hand. Call cost, pay one of your opponent's gauge. She's a 6/2/2. When she attacks and they have 1 or less gauge, you tell them to discard a card, which is really nice. So first turn, you can make your opponent hand drop a little. And while she's on the board, they can't call monsters from the drop, which is... Didn't see that one coming, but you know what? It works. It works well too. Yeah, like if it works, it works. Next, I'm playing 3 Brawlzeus, the boss monster of the deck so far. His call cost when he comes into play, you tell your opponent to lose a gauge, a life. Well, you take a gauge and a life from your opponent, and then you take a card off your field, put it in the drop zone. Your opponent can Soul Guard against this if they have something with Soul Guard. Usually, I call him to get problematic cards that I can't usually deal with, so like set spells, items, whatnot. Just things that I don't want to see, or things with like stipulations that say they can't be destroyed and whatnot. Just get off the field. Usually make your opponent have to work to put it back on the board, which is draining them from their combos of winning. He has the plunder ability. When he hits anything, so your opponent or their monsters, he deals 2 damage to them, you gain 2 life. So on a direct hit, he can deal 4, which is really nice, and that's practically the game in most cases. He will get blocked like 8 out of 10 times they're going to block him. So if they have a shield, it's usually reserved. Next, I'm playing 3 Roaring Hydra, the buddy. I wanted to keep the deck count at 50, so I'm only playing 3 of it. I could toss in the 4th one to make it 4, but I got 3 foils. So, size 0, 1/1/1. When the Hydra touches anything, so your opponent or their monsters, you tell them to drop a gauge. If they don't have a gauge to drop, you tell them to discard a card. If they block the Hydra still does its job. If the Hydra hit, the Hydra still does its job. That's why it's nice. It's 1 damage, so if they really care about that gauge or hand, so whatever. And he's good to throw in team attacks, because most monsters are like 5, 6, or the main ones that you're attacking with. So you can make it like 6,000 power, 7,000 power, sometimes 8, or even 10 if you got the size 3 on the board. Next, 2 copies of Dysfunctional Gihilia. 523. She has an act ability which allows her to tap herself and pay 1 gauge to pick up 2 Godpunk monsters from the drop besides herself with different sizes. So you can recycle your Brawlzeuses in the same turn, your Godpunks, Craze Girl, the snakes, whatever you really need. It was smart by saying she can't grab herself, because then you could just loop the entire game until your opponent doesn't have resources, and that would be it would be fun for you, but not your opponent, and I guess that's fair. So she does what she gotta do. I'm thinking about playing her at 3, but 2's working out, because when I had her at higher numbers, I would see her too much, and I wouldn't be able to grab shit from the drop, because it would either be her or just nothing in there. Next, 2 Bone Splitter, 524. When he comes into play, you shuffle your opponent's gauge back into the deck, and then they charge 2. If you shuffle any gauge, you gain 2 life. So he's your life gain. He's good for generating resources like Godpunk, so you can pay for your other stuff like Brawlzeus and Craze Girl. Yeah, he's nice. Sometimes you can recycle him just to gain more life back with Gihilia. Other times, probably only really calling him like 1 time in a game. I was playing him at 1, rarely saw him, and I was getting waxed real bad because my opponent would get hip to the deck and say, I'm just not going to charge gauge, or I'm going to use all my gauge and have nothing for you to take on your turn, which would hurt the deck a lot. And then last of the monsters, I'm playing 1 of each. I'm playing 1 Wicked Giant Trash Argus, and 1 Fingers Murad Zaparanos. I'm only playing 1 of each because I like them, but I don't think playing them more at 1 is like necessary for me, because I'm not. What they do don't fit the playstyle that I want the deck to do. For the size 1, it's a 4/2/1. You pay 1 of your opponent's gauge. At the start of the attack step, if they have 1 or less gauge, he gets double attack, so he gets swing twice, which is really nice. And if he gets destroyed, you can destroy a card in your opponent's field. So usually you leave him, you want to call him in the center, so they have to attack him or do something to get rid of him, because if he dies, then you tell a card on their field that can die to die. So he handles like weapons and set spells, because the deck doesn't really have like spells and shit that can get rid of those besides Brawlzeus in him. And then Fingers Murad, size 3, 923. You pay 1 of your opponent's gauge and you get top deck soul. When he's destroyed, you tell your opponent to discard a card and you ping them for a life. He has double attack soul guard. First turn, I like going into him, so I usually play the search spell, grab him, and then let him sit there and let them deal with that, which is like good defense. So lowering their hand, and then you can usually go off on yours. I only want to see him first turn, and then after that, I just want to play with everything else. So, yeah. Next, on the weapons. I'm playing 3 Mexplosive X Chaos Demon Slay. This is just my own personal like tech choice. It's a 5/0. You pay 1 gauge to equip it. This card can attack past your center, so if you have a monster in your center, you can swing. And it gets a critical for each monster on the board, and if you have 3 or more monsters, it gets penetrate. So it got an errata. This A3, so it's usable in Danger World now. The reason why I play this one instead of like the other weapons in the main deck anyway, is because I like all the monsters and I enjoy the fact that they like actually do annoying things that make your opponent want to attack them instead of you most times. So putting like a Brawlzeus on your like left or right, and then maybe like Trash August in the center, and then the Snake on the side, or just having like 3 size 1s on the board, or the size 3 and 2 zeros. Just making problem like monsters that your opponent's like, well, I can't really leave that on the board, but I want to attack him. Also, the fact that it gets 3 crit and penetrate means that my opponent has something in its center. I can link attack with Brawlzeus, and for 11, if it touches, I'm dealing 5 damage and gaining 2 life back because penetrate, and this will kick off, which is nice. So it's good to like get like sneaky good, because people will usually try to like, you know, usually block Brawlzeus, but if you throw him in with something, it makes the attack a lot better. I'm playing 3 Invincible Knuckle. It's the Godpunk shield. You can only cast it during attacking your opponent's turn. You got a Godpunk on the field. Pay gauge, counter, nullify the attack, gain a life, lose a life. You gain 1 and your opponent loses 1. And you deal a damage to him. I'm only playing 3 because I don't necessarily like any shield that I have to pay a resource for, and it has a stipulation to cast. And I can't cast it on my first turn, so if my opponent tries to OTK me, there's that. Yeah, that's just my personal opinion on the matter. If you ever want to know how I feel about shields that got stipulations, well, now you know. Next, 3 Demon Slay Bloodwind Wall. When testing this deck, I'm like, you know what? I can do the nuts, but if I can't defend myself, what the nuts good for? So it needed a bit more defense. This was the only shield that I saw that didn't have like a stipulation I needed, and I can use it close center as well as this one. So you can block your monsters if they want to swing on you know, the monster in your center. You're like, I don't want it to die yet, you can block for it. Or you can fill your board up with the monsters, and they start swinging on like Brawlzeus or whatever on the left and right, and you block for them. Next, 3 Junk Wheel. Cast cost, destroy Godpunk on your field, and pay gauge. Pretty much everything that came out that first box is Godpunk, so they got weapons and set spells and monsters, so you have a large plethora that you can destroy. Counter, choose 1 of the 2. You can rip all the soul out of a monster, or you can destroy up to 2 monsters on your opponent's field. If you destroy any monsters, you draw a card. So if you get to hit anything off of this, you get it cycles itself in the hand, which is really nice. Next, playing All Is Mine. Search spell. Pay 1 gauge. Search for Godpunk monster item. Can only cast it once per turn. Self-explanatory. This can get all my 1-ofs. This can get the Gihilias, so I can start my plays. My cycle plays if need be. You know, that's pretty much it, because this deck draws a lot, but having a search card in here, especially like in the opening hand, is good. I want to see it at 4 because it feels a bit cloggy, but 3 is fine. Next, members only, the deity. Set spell. At the start of your opponent's turn, this procs, and you can choose 1 of the 2 abilities, which is to tell them to drop a card and you draw, or they lose a gauge and you gauge 2. Now, since these are all and abilities, so that means regardless of if the first stipulation is met or not, you can still get the effect. So if your opponent didn't have a card in hand, you can choose the first effect to draw, or if they don't have a gauge, you can tell them to lose an imaginary gauge and gauge 2. I'm playing 4 because I want to see it. There's no way to search this. Yeah, I could start drawing the extra copies, but I can always charge those. So to see this consistently, I want to play it at 4. very degenerate draw spell. Immortal Speech. You can only cast if you got Godpunk on the field. You tell your opponent to discard a card, and you pay 2 gauge. Tell your opponent to discard a card. You draw 2. Again, if they don't have a card for them to discard, since it's you tell them to drop a card and you draw 2. If they don't have a hand, you can still draw 2 off of this. So it's nice. Again, playing 4 for consistency. Always want to see this. Seeing this in the opening hand and having like Crazed Girl, you can tell them to drop 2 cards, so most times they start with 4 or whatever, which is really nice, versus the standard 6, or if they're playing like Chaos and shit, they start with 2 cards in hand, so they really can't go off. Next, 2 copies of Dimensional Demon Slayer. Really old card. You can only cast it if you don't have a monster in the center. Rip a gauge from your opponent and you charge 1. So it works with the theme of the deck. Only 2, because there are some times where I'd rather not call a monster and just stick with what I have on my board versus trying to get that gauge off. And the fact that you can charge with it means you can pay for an Immortal Speech if you don't have it, you don't have the gauge, the search card, yada yada. And again, since it's and, if your opponent doesn't have a gauge for you to rip, you can still gauge a card, which is nice. Next, 2 copies of Obstruct, because why not? Your talent, Obstruct can only be played on your opponent's turn. Pay 1 life, counter speed for that turn and the next. So for your opponent's turn and your turn, nobody can draw cards by their own card effects. Really nice, because since you're making your opponent discard a lot of cards out their hand and making them use resources to keep the advantage up, why would you ever want to not have something that says you can't keep the advantage up, so you can't draw into like the nuts, or like you get like a weird win condition or some shit like that. Like and a lot of decks are drawn way too much. Like Buddy Fight isn't as hard to isn't as like hard it was in like the past seasons. So like from like triple D and down, because now people are drawing like 5, 6, 7 cards a turn just for like nothing, and it's not ridiculous, but I'm gonna get mine. Alright, like next, another old card, Fang Dragon Declaration. I recently added this in because of people were just blocking Brawlzeus and the snake, and I mean, it's fine if you block the snake, but I want that 4 damage off of Brawlzeus most times. So you can only cast this when one thing on your field is swinging and your opponent casts a spell. You pay 2 gauge and a life, nullify the spell cast. Now, due to like the new rule where like while you're in battle, the counter restriction is lifted, so there are times where, you know, you'll swing and then they'll block, and then you'll activate this, and they'll be like, okay, well, cast a new spell to nullify the attack and shit. And you're like, well, at least they didn't get what they wanted on the first one, but it's usually like late game when you already know they don't have a lot of stuff in hand anyway. But yeah, it's nice. It's a nice card. It really helps getting Brawlzeus and just damage in when your opponent's definitely like, nah, I need that to live. And the next 2 copies of the Impact, Top Fist Punishment, Curvanos Burst Fist. You need a Godpunk on the field, and your opponent needs to be at 5 life. You pay 1 gauge, deal 2 damage. If they have no gauge, you deal 5 instead, which is really nice. It's not hard to do, but I'm only playing 2 of this and not more than that because I want it for the 5 damage instead of... I want it for the 5 damage to end the game faster, but there are times where you can actually get the 2 off because it's not hard. If you got 2 in hand, you can just play them back to back because it's only 1 gauge and it's not really hurting. Like, nothing in the deck is really that expensive, And since you get like gauge back from Daipon, like out the ass, or even the set spell, might as well like see if you can like text some shit in that costs some gauge and whatnot. Next sideboard, just throwing ideas around. Playing 3 of Skybad Jacket. This jacket is nice because it gives all of your Godpunk monsters 4K power and move. So now they can touch for like at least 7K and like 6K and up. So you can start touching like, you know, your Sonic moods and like King of Jitos with the size 0 and soul. And it also can't be destroyed, and you pay gauge and life to equip it. Too bad it doesn't give itself the power, because that would have been nice to have a 9K weapon swing, which would have completely made the other weapon useless, but that's neither here nor there. Aside these in, when my opponent is playing like usually like Link Dragons, Astro Chickens, and like whatever other deck, and it's for the other side card, which is Final Battle Skill Magi Demon Slay. Another old card. You lock the center space for you and your opponent for size 2 or less monsters. So this really hurts like Link and Astro Dragons, and it makes it want to get this card off the field as fast as possible. Because if you equip this, since you can't call monsters to the center, now you can move, which is nice. So it like slows the game down astronomically for them. For you, you're fine if you have an open center or not. It doesn't matter. And you can set more than one of these too. So if it gets down there, you can just stack both of them and make them have to deal with it again. I'm signing one more Bone Splitter because I want my opponent to have gauge and whatnot, because I need them to have resources to play my cards, essentially. Yeah. And he gives you life, because why not? Life is always nice. I'm playing the 3rd Obstruct because I really don't want my opponent to draw cards. If I side this in, I'm taking the 4th copy of the draw spell out, just for like, you know, there's no point to have all this draw and not be able to draw if I use this. So yeah, really impressive, keeping my opponent under control. And then 3 skill binders, because the skill binder and everything damn near got penetrate double attack. And for a gauge, I can at counter speed rest a card with penetrate or double attack. So usually side out one of the shields for it. Maybe like usually the life gain shield, so Invincible Knuckle, because they're like the same costs and whatnot, so might as well keep it fair and not like, you know, jar or whatever I'm doing that. But yeah, that's the deck. I hope this puts you on the sun. If not, whatever, that's cool. What's up? Alright, that's all I got. You got any words for the people, Reese?
I'm working, man. I'm not here.
Alright, say no more.